Hi sweeties, how are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, sweetheart, kindly smash that subscribe button and turn your notification so you are notified each time I upload, and please give this video a thumb up. I appreciate you all so much, and I am saying a very big shout out to every one of you for all the love and support you all shower me here with. I am grateful, and you all are super sweet. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about this black woman who actually came out unapologetically, sharing her experience and saying it the way it is, as in, as a black woman in predominantly white neighborhood raising kids, and when you are a minority, a sambu. And she actually made her point, and a lot of people actually came all out to also share their experiences about what they experience, and the rest of it, how their kids end up being bullied, probably because they are black, because they have to try to adapt, or trying to get used to the environment the kids are, and how difficult it is most times for the kids, and the rest of this, and also the rate to the season they also experience, and all that. And I am I think parents should also, before they move, they should also consider their kids' mental health, their education, and the rest of it, because some of them actually get to school to be bullied, and sometimes they get to school and see things like that, see some slurs written on their lockers, people calling them monkey and all that, and the rest of, you all know what can happen when a black person lives in a palm colored community and all that. I mean, it's really something you all need to see, because she came all out, and the stitches are absolutely brilliant too, because a lot of people also came with their experiences and what they experienced when they moved, and the rest of that. I am just gonna roll this clip. We'll come back to talk about it, and I absolutely want to read all your comments. Let me know what you all think in the comments section, and straight up, let's go do it together.
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull. And I get the goal is to have the best opportunities, the best school, the best education. But honestly, at what cost? Because while as a parent you're worrying about their academics and opportunities, kids just trying to fit in. And they're looking around for ways to connect to other kids. What do we have in common beside our address? Maybe it's hair color or eye color. Maybe it's language. Maybe it's anime. Maybe it's gender or music. And that's all fine when they're young. But as they develop, pre-adolescence, when they start really seeing themselves and trying to figure out who they are or who they're becoming, it becomes a little more complicated, because they start noticing certain dynamics and they start feeling marginalized. Always on the fray of a thing, but not in the mix of it. Sleepovers where other moms know each other better than your mom know any of the moms, because they hang out or they go to the same synagogue or the same church. And then there's the biases, conscious or unconscious. I mean, your kid might be really good at the sport, but the dads that hang out together kind of look alike, and so they tend to pick each other's kids as top kids on the team. Or your daughter or son never gets a solo in a dance performance, and you don't want to pull out the race card and say that's it. But you might feel it in the pit of your stomach though. And if you don't have a community for your child, the struggle is real, because they really feel alone, fighting for their lives, trying to figure out who they are. Self-loathing starts. They just want to fit in. One of the things I noticed is when I went back home to the hood, and yeah, the area looks depressing, the buildings are dilapidated or whatever, but going into the store, there is a real sense of community amongst my own that I didn't notice before. Like the way that we just organically talk to each other in the aisles, calling each other baby, ma'am, sir, honey. Like if my boys were walking around in the store in the hood, somebody else's mom is gonna call them baby. Baby, can you pick that up for me? Honey, can you get that over there? Ain't nobody in Wegmans calling my sons baby or honey. And it's a subtle thing, I get it, but it's connection, and it builds a sense of community in ways that you don't even think about, because if you're in mostly white spaces, white kids are getting that all day because they look like somebody else's son or daughter or nephew. And so they may be getting that kind of constant nurturing within their community from random strangers all the time. And so they're in a community that's constantly building their self-esteem, constantly encouraging them in some way. And I got a bone to pick with other black moms in these communities. Like if you're in the suburbs and there's about 3-4 of us in a huge community, we're just peppered into the neighborhood. Why aren't we speaking to each other? What is with the wave and keep walking if we do? Because other ethnicities unapologetically get together in the playground, on the corners, start hanging out together. I think we're afraid to look like we're about to start an uprising. I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
So let me start by saying I've moved a total of about 5 times with my husband's job. And so when I give my experience regarding this topic, I'm speaking from a place of having moved several times. Watching her video brought up for me the feelings I had when I lived in Dallas, Texas, and we lived in North Dallas. So we were closer to like the Colony and the Frisco area. And I remember being so proud of myself because we had this beautiful home in this beautiful neighborhood and we were probably the only black folks over there. And I remember seeing my son's school and thinking, oh my gosh, we did it. The school was immaculate. It was rated well. It had great resources. I thought my son is in a good school. And so I felt, proud because I grew up going to Title I schools. My schools didn't have a lot of resources. So, it was a totally different experience I was providing for my child. And I thought that's what you're supposed to aspire towards. Fast forward about 6 months, my son got in more trouble at that school than he got into his entire life. And I have videos on my page lower down talking about his experience with this particular school because there was so much happening there. But he started to get into so much trouble. He started to lose his motivation. He started to bring home C's and D's and even an F when he had always brought home A's and B's. And for the first time in his life, I could see that he was starting to buckle. And the sad part is I literally sat there and I wondered to myself, like, do I pull him out of this situation and protect him as his mother, or do I allow him to stay in the situation and build his strength because this is what he's going to face in the real world when I'm not there with him? It got to a point where I had to realize, like, I'm compromising my son's psychological safety. I'm putting him in a position where he's not going to be able to recover if I don't pull him out of this environment. And I was causing him more harm than I was causing him good in an environment that was supposed to be good because it didn't see him racially. It didn't understand his identity. It didn't nurture and develop him. He didn't have community. I could go on and on and on, not just for him, but for me too. I even remember looking for like Omega Lamplighters or like some other kind of resource group that could help him. But what I found was most of these groups were like located very far away in lower income neighborhoods. And for some reason, people don't think that kids who are, in homes where they're doing well still need support. Our experience in Dallas, Texas definitely reframed for me what is good, what's a good neighborhood, what's a good school, who's a good teacher, because I understood that more is needing to be considered than just the aesthetics of a thing. We definitely don't talk enough about how being one of few or the only can seriously impact the quality of your life.
If you are Black and considering moving your family into a predominantly palm-colored community, go back and watch her video in its entirety. You see, I've walked in her shoes. I moved my family, my children when they were young, into a neighborhood that was predominantly palm-colored. In fact, not predominantly. We were the only melanated people in the entire community. And it was by far the worst decision I've ever made for my family. It did not take me long, though, to correct it, to get us up out of there and bring us back home. Moving on up does not mean that we have to necessarily move out. Don't be deceived. There is a peace and a joy and a level of comfort that comes with us being united in community and living among people who look like us. Not only was my neighborhood overtly racist, but my kids went to school where they would get the word the N word, written on their books if they walked away, on their lockers, the N word. They were treated horribly, not only by the students who were racist, but where do you think the students got it from? The parents who were also racist, and the school teachers, principal, they were all blatantly, unapologetically racist. Now, there was only so much I was willing to take. So I did what I had to do. Even when I lived in the palm-colored community, I removed my children from the school system they were supposed to be in, drove my children miles back into the community I moved from in order to put them in school where they could learn and live in peace. But I learned a lot from that mistake. One of the things I learned is that though the media and the world would like to make you believe that Black communities are unsafe, where we are fighting one another and we are killing one another, and it's just thugs, and it's just an unsafe place to be, the devil is a lie. I feel much safer in my communities than I know I was in the palm-colored community. You see, what they do doesn't hit the headlines. It doesn't end up on the news. Now, if anything happens in a Black community, it's news. Anything negative, it's huge news. But when palm-colored people act a fool, when they riot, when they are stabbing and killing and do it's hush, hush, shh. That predominantly palm-colored community was never safe. It was never safe for me. It was never safe for my children. It had gotten so bad to the point that I actually had sheriffs living in my home to protect my family round the clock. Like they had to take shifts. Somebody would come in the morning, stay till a certain time. When his shift was over, the next cop would come in and stay. That wasn't in a Black neighborhood. Did you get that? Predominantly. Yeah. We had to live with cops, with a cop in our house in order to live in peace. And I'm old, but I ain't that old. It wasn't that long ago. So I said all of that to say this to my melanated brothers and sisters who are thinking of moving into a predominantly neighborhood. Seek wise counsel. If you really want to do that, find someone that looks like you in the community and talk to them. Find out what the school system is going to be like for your children. Learn what the experiences are for people who look like you in that community. I just strongly advise that you don't do it without doing huge research. And this video is not to say that all palm-colored communities are bad. It is not to say that they're all palm-colored people are bad. That is not what I am saying at all. So for those of you who are going to come in the comments and say, well, I live there and I don't never had a problem, I am so happy for you. I am sharing my experience and advising people to do the research so that they can make a well-informed decision, because the decision that you're considering not only affects you, but it will affect your entire family. So use wisdom. So my children are all grown now, and the decisions I make as far as where I want to live only affect me. And I am on the verge of making a decision about where I want to spend the rest of my life. I'm considering leaving my city and moving to either another state or into my real desire is to move into another country. The only drawback is I don't know that I can bring my children with me, which would be very difficult. Anyway, that's another story. That's another video. But what I do want you to know that wherever I move, and I can live just about anywhere I would choose to live financially. I am in a place in my life, that I could buy a home in any community that I wanted to. However, wherever Batista ends up, it will either be a community that is extremely diverse, or it will be a community of the people I love, admire, and respect with all my heart. And that's the melanated Black brothers and sisters, queens and kings that God blessed me to be a part of. So you do you, because I'm definitely going to do me. Think about it.
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
Okay, so I agree with her because I'm from Chicago, Illinois, right? Right. And I moved to Milwaukee when my son was 1. Moved to Stevens Point when my son was 3. So, if you know, Stevens Point, look it up. Black people take up about 5% of the town. So, my son is surrounded by sheets of notebook paper walking everywhere. And it's like his voice, the way he's speaking, the way he pronounces words, is just so fluently. And he fits in that way. Because the black kids, oh, you're not black enough because the way you talk. But, he's not white enough either, just because of the way he talks. He's still probably one of the darkest kids on the playground. Literally, one of the darkest. So he's been called with all type of names, N-words, black monkeys, all type of things. And he's been penalized in school harsher than other colored students. My son was 8 years old, and a student threatened his life. A piece of notebook paper threatened his life, punched him in the face twice. My son retaliated, and the police was called on my son, and handcuffs was put on my 8-year-old son. You always get looked at as the aggressor when you try to protect your children in this environment. You say, how many? Can we go now? Yes. You always look like that. I've been banned from places for what's up? I've been banned from places for protecting my children, defending my children, and it's like they don't teach them their culture. So like they're so confused. They don't fit in. Like she said, they're not in the mix, but they're just stringing along. So it's just like, it confuses your child a lot. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. It's really hard to just, I would not recommend it. I don't care how good the schools is, how good the environment. You are mentally kind of traumatizing your kids. It's kind of the same as being mixed a little bit. So
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
Okay, so yes, everything that she's saying, absolutely 100% completely true. So when I was going into 7th grade, my family moved from the inner city in Kansas City to Lee Summit. And of course, my family was thinking about all of the things that I was going to gain, right? So I would have a safer school, a safer neighborhood, better academics, and more opportunities to be safe, to grow up, to have different types of friends, having different types of experiences. However, I don't think that my parents really considered what it was that I was losing. So I was losing that community, those people, being surrounded by people that look like me, being surrounded by people that sound like me, all the representation. And I'm not talking about just one teacher. So when I was in middle school, I don't remember having a black teacher. And I only remember having about 5 black friends. When I was in high school, there was one teacher that was there maybe my last 2 years. And I don't even think she was a teacher. I think she was a parent or something. So, yes, you want your kids to have a great school experience. However, you have to think about it in totality. So, how are my kids going to fit in? What kind of community am I bringing my children of color into? And so I can completely attest that while I went to a great school, I missed out on so much connection with people that look like me. Now, I feel like I'm a little bit different in my situation because I still belong to a black church. And so I still, you know, got to be with the mothers and, hey, baby, hand me some candy, all of that. But still going to school every day, I felt like, why did my parents drop me off here? I did not ask for that. Growing up and wondering why none of the black guys that I went to school with dated any of the black girls. It was just super, super weird. It was super weird, and that is not something that I want for my own children. No.
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
As a Caribbean mother of 2, I think about this a lot, especially because not only are you moving like from your hood, you're moving from your island to, to whether you move to the hood in the US or to the suburbs in the US. I think about that a lot because not only do they now have to overcome the challenge of whatever skin color barrier, but they also have to overcome the challenge of the culture barrier, right? So, how we would speak is different. And so it means that especially depending on the age that you bring your child to this country, and to this country, I mean America, but it really could be any foreign country. Depending on the age, it means that they'll have to start code switching much earlier than you probably envisioned or anticipated. The other day we went to a family reunion, and the family reunion was here in America, and a lot of my American cousins was so shocked by how quickly my son had started basically code switching because it's survival, right? You can't fault a child who's 5, 6, 7 for speaking in a different way than they're accustomed speaking, because they feel like they need to do that in order to fit in. And and as much as you try to teach your child that, like, listen, standing out is the real secret sauce, like, embrace that side of you. It's hard when you're in class and the teacher calls on you and you answer, and everybody in the class is like, what are you saying? And you could say that's on them, right? They need to listen better or any of that. But it's, for a young child to be like having to repeat themselves all the time so that people understand, people like, you talk funny, it's difficult. And I do think about, like, definitely how we communicate, because even as Caribbean people, the way we greet children is even different from the way like an American black would greet their kids in the neighborhood, right? So, it's all the challenges of that. So my heart aches for this mom. I understand everything that she's saying, and I feel it also in my core as a Caribbean mother trying to raise, children here.
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
Okay, I 100% agree with this video, and if you haven't already watched it, please go watch it. Essentially, the creator talks about how when you're a minority in a primarily white neighborhood, how insidiously difficult that can be for kids. not even in the ways of experiencing direct racism, which might happen. You might get called the N-word or be told that your hair doesn't look professional, quote unquote, which we hear all the time. Curly hair, kinky hair is not professional. It's not a clean look. We've all heard that before, but some of the more insidious stuff that you don't even really notice is going on until you go back to be amongst like more diverse people or your own people. For me, if you can't tell, I'm mixed. So my dad is black, my mom is white. I grew up in a primarily white neighborhood, community, whatever you want to call it, in Wisconsin. And all I can say is I really feel for any kid that's currently going through the same thing where you just feel othered, you just don't feel really accepted or loved, and sometimes you can't even put your finger on why. You just feel different, and you just feel like something's wrong with you. For example, I always straighten my hair as a kid. My hair is just back in a little bun right now, but when I was young, I always straightened my hair just to be like the other white girls in my school. And I remember on the days when I would try to come with it curly, they would say comments to me like, "Oh, you didn't do your hair today," as in like my hair was not done. My natural hair was not done, and it needed to be done. Otherwise, I was not ready to be seen by society. And that's so hurtful. Not even, necessarily, I don't even have time to get into the mental health aspects of being a biracial black kid in a white school, but most of the friends that I had that were also black or biracial ended up self-harming in different ways. Many of us just felt different, weird, strange, for the most part accepted, but with conditions. Like I said, hair has to be done, and we were always just kind of trying to blend in and kind of like, I don't know, not feel fully accepted for who we are. So this video was super eye-opening, and I agree with the creator. It's really insidious. It takes a lot of work to raise kids of color in a white neighborhood and not have them grow up feeling othered. So yeah, watch that video if you haven't already.
Try to ride with me. I grew up in a culture where you kept all of your business to yourself.
That right there, watch it. Watch that full video, because her truth is a truth that so many of us are having a hard time saying. We're so scared of what people might think. And the truth has to be revealed. It can no longer be hidden. We can no longer carry the burdens hidden on our families. It's time for us to activate bravery and share not only the happy-go-lucky times, but share our hearts and our struggles so that others might know that they're not alone. I thank all the people that are willing to be vulnerable and are willing to be real. I love you. Thank you.
I'm just going to say it. Raising kids in the suburbs where you're the minority is some bull.
I think this mama did a great job of speaking her mind. And her feelings are mine too. My perspective is a little bit different because I'm that 90s, 2000 baby, that minority that grew up looking for the kids to fit in. Times are different now when you have the internet, but back then you had 106 in Park. You had to be at the TV at that time if you wanted to see anybody that kind of looks like you, or you had to wait in the mail to get a magazine. I couldn't go to my school, my park, anywhere, even just going grocery shopping. There was no one that looked like me. My hair was getting pet all the time. It was really hard only seeing Avril Lavigne's having that stick straight hair, no booty. That was the in thing. So it is important to find that community. Definitely. It's important for the mamas and for the child to find that community. Times are different now with the internet, and it's kind of in vogue to be diet black, to be honest. I'm seeing people like me a lot more often now that I'm older, and I love it. But times have changed.
So this is all I got from this video, and first of all, I'm going to start by saying that the creator actually did a lot, did great by coming out to speak her mind and say it the way it is. And also I also seen some parents, especially black parents, talking about what it feels like for their kids to be in a predominantly neighborhood where there are probably the only black people living there, or just quite few of them, and all that, and the challenges they are facing. And sometimes it also affects their kids' mental health and their grades and all that. And then that reminds me of one story a man told. Actually, he was saying that okay, they moved and they put their child in a school where they, a child that was doing absolutely great, all of a sudden they started dropping his grade because he is black and all that, and I think they were worried and decided to start asking questions. And the answer they actually gave that man, really knocked his head off. And he was like, really, is this what I am going to put my child through and all that? So it's also more as you are moving, probably as a parent, or and you make sure that where you are moving your child is where somewhere a child will also be accepted and all that. It is not some of the kids get to school to see their lockers with something like monkeys, the N-word, and telling them some nasty things and the rest of it, where they are actually not accepted and the rest of it. And then I also have to say this, the colored people really have a lot of job to do with their kids, because sometimes I feel like when you don't raise your child right, that is all. Sometimes not even when you don't raise your child right, sometimes it is who their parents are that they end up being, So when their parents are also raised deceased, and then there's something the kids can also see. It is rare for the kids to also grow up with them and not being the same thing their parents are. It just takes a lot of work and God's grace for the child to turn up different. Or maybe as they keep growing, they kind of get to know that, man, this is right, this is not right, and this is, So I also encourage black people, even when you move to the neighborhood where it is only predominantly white and there are some other black people, man, there is no need throwing away your face when you see someone that looks like you. Feel free to talk to one another, try to get to understand one another. Also create a community in that white community, and which will kind of also benefit you and also benefit the kids. Because trust me, there is nothing like growing in a neighborhood where the kids are accepted. But then it's more also preparing them for the world, because whether they are accepted or not, in the end, they will still see how the world see them, maybe as a minority group, or as a black person, or as a colored person, and the rest of it. Also, it's more also prepare, but then don't prepare my child for the world in a very harsh, in a terrible way, telling trying to make him learn in a hard way and all that. There is a way you teach a child, you tell a child, trying to let them understand history and the rest of it, than him trying to learn in a hard way. I wouldn't want somebody to do that to my kid, or probably make my kid go through the hard way to learn one or two things and all that. So it is me also telling you, make sure before you move, make sure it is somewhere your child can adapt, and make sure it is not something that is going to affect your child's psychological, this and the rest of it. This is where I am going to draw the curtain. Thank you so much for the support, and see you all in my next video. Bye for now.